Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today for our free webinar, Pulse Diagnosis, What is Happening to the Pulses During the Pandemic, featuring Martha Lucas. My name is Jeff Bloom, Education Marketing Manager here at LASA OMS. During these crazy times, we have decided to offer as much educational content as possible for you. Some will be timely like today's webinar, and some will just be fun content to keep us learning and thinking. We are lucky to have gracious experts like Martha who offer to share their expertise with us today to give back during this difficult time. I would like to take a moment to acclimate you to the webinar room. We recommend viewing the webinar in Chrome, Firefox, or Safari, as you can explore us in other browsers. And to the right of the video screen, you will see 3 tabs: Chat, Questions, and Polls. To chat with other attendees or to communicate any technical difficulties, please the Chat tab. And for questions for the guest speaker, please make sure to use the Questions tab to assure that we answer them at the end of the lecture. Please note that each webinar is recorded, and immediately following the conclusion, you will receive an email with a link to view the video on demand. We will also share the recording with the slides and any other complimentary material in the following week or 2 on our blog. You may always visit our blog and use the free webinar tag to find all of our previously recorded events. From telemedicine to sports acupuncture to CBD, you'll find something interesting for every practitioner at the LASA OMS blog. I would also like to mention a few great new features at LASA OMS. We are currently in the process of soft launching our new LASA Direct Dispensary program to allow practitioners to recommend products to patients and receive a commission on those purchases. If you'd like to learn more about this program, please contact Carl Schwartz. Carl will put his email address into the chat box shortly. We also now have the ability to receive text alerts about inventory updates and other important information. All you have to do is text the word supply to 855-58-3253. Carl will also put this into the chat for you. Now for our featured speaker, we are proud to introduce Dr. Martha Lucas. Dr. Lucas holds a Ph.D. in research psychology and a degree in Chinese medicine. She has more than 20 years of teaching experience that includes seminars where she teaches pulse diagnosis and biofeedback to doctors and practitioners of TCM, the Mazen Cosmetic Acupuncture System, and an acupuncture point course where she shares functions and unique point prescriptions. Dr. Lucas also has a private practice in Denver, Colorado, and she works for Littleton Internal Medicine Associates. Her books include Pulse Diagnosis Beyond Slippery and Wiry, Cosmetic Acupuncture Works, Your Guide to Anti-Aging, the Mazen Cosmetic Acupuncture Workbook, and You Don't Need Botox. Her latest book projects are Sex Sucks, What Can We Do About It? And for children, The Skeleton in a Tutu Gets Acupuncture. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Martha Lucas.
Hey everyone, good to see you. I remember years ago, and now it's been decades ago, when I was in clinic one day with my beloved mentor, Jim Ramholtz. And we saw this woman, a younger woman who came in with digestive issues, and Jim taking her pulses, and he asks, how's your digestion? She says, I'm a vegetarian. He says, no, you're not. And I'll never forget my feeling about that. And then she said, sir, maybe you didn't hear me. I'm a vegetarian. And he still said, no, you're not. So after that, and then the treatment went on, and then we went in the break room and we got in there, and I said, Jim, that thing with the patient before, that kind of like little arguing, vegetarian, no, you're not, vegetarian, no, you're not. I need help with understanding why that happened. And he said, and I will never forget it, if you could feel the beginning of a tumor in the patient's pulse, you knew you had to give them some information and advice, probably nutritional advice, you wouldn't tell them? That is your responsibility. Well, I took that to heart more than 20 years ago, that is our responsibility. Our responsibility is to help patients. Our responsibility isn't just to do some acupuncture, it's to help our patients get well. So as Jeff said, I started out my career in Western medicine doing research in hospitals. Then I went to CSTCM, my Chinese medicine training school, because I took a class in color puncture as a research psychologist, because I started to get curious about, even though my patients had just had bypass surgery, so I knew that mechanically surgery was a great tool, what else was happening? So this class in color puncture which didn't give a ton of explanation about why you put red here and why you put yellow there, made me go to Chinese medicine school, because as a researcher, I'm curious, I want to solve problems. I needed to know why you put red here, yellow there. But I met Jim my first semester in school. He made me fall in love with pulse diagnosis, and so here I am. But I had no intention of doing the whole program. I just wanted to find out about the colors. So anyway, it's why I'm so passionate about pulse diagnosis, and why I call my system biofeedback, because the patient's body literally tells us what to do next. The patient's body literally says, oh yeah, that didn't open the DIMI, you need to do something else. So I know you can't learn pulse diagnosis from a webinar or a book. You guys know that too. You need a teacher, you need a mentor. But what I can do is show you some pictures today, which I'm going to do, which you may have felt before in the pulses, but didn't know what it was. Also, I've always felt like, even I was back being a professor in university, that my job is to kind of strain your brain. My job is to make you question things. And so I still hold that also in my classes. I like people to be like, whoa, I never thought of that before. Huh, that's fairly neat. Or maybe I need to look at that. So today I'm hoping that you're going to learn a lot, and that I'm going to clarify some things for you, and in general, just get you pretty excited about pulse diagnosis. And so first, we're going to look today at COVID-19, the science of a pandemic, the immune system, really. We're going to be looking at the science of the immune system, and we're going to be looking at the pulses. So let's talk about the biomedicine of stress. What we're finding out with research is that stress, especially chronic stress, causes what they call dysregulation of the immune system. So I honestly, at one point in a study I was reading, had to say, I said, oh my, to myself, when I read that while severe, acute, stressful life events, so something that doesn't even last for a month, was not associated with the more frequent tendency to catch cold, get a herpes outbreak. Severe chronic stressors, which lasted longer than a month, were associated with a substantial increase in your risk for catching a cold, getting a herpes outbreak, getting an upper respiratory infection. And the most interesting thing, probably the thing that made me say, oh my, was that the factors that they studied were under or unemployment and enduring interpersonal stressors with family and friends. And I thought, wow, here we are. We're over a month into a lot of people being either underemployed or unemployed altogether. And the interpersonal stress of social distancing, not being able to see our families, not being able to give our families hugs, and that sort of thing. So honestly, even just one night of total sleep deprivation reduces your immune response. So, and now that's total sleep deprivation, but now we're into well over a month of people having sleep disturbances and interpersonal disturbances. So now, as you know, anxiety historically, in an evolutionary sense, is beneficial, right? In the old days, when our hair stood up on end because there was a predator outside of our cave door, it was a good thing. It led us into fight or flight, it led us into a response, and we were ready to respond. And that's the same way our immune system acts. A virus or bacteria comes in, and our immune system needs to be ready to say, uh-oh, that's a problem. I need to deal with that problem. The issue is that response, that fight or flight response, is our most costly response. It's the one that takes up too much of our resources, too many of our resources. And now we know that the immune system is not an autonomous system. It responds to messages from our nervous system. It responds to messages from our endocrine systems. So in the historical sense of fight or flight, that's a good thing. When that stressor turns into something more chronic, then we start to see this immune system dysregulation. So unfortunately, what's happening is our body is still having the same response to stress and using up a lot more energy or a lot more of the system than it needs to, considering that now it's chronic stress that we're dealing with. It's not the predator at the door. So I feel like maybe in a sense, you know, the evolution of our bodies knows that. It knows that fight or flight uses too much energy for us to keep doing it day after day after day during a chronic stress. But the problem is the dysregulation of it. Maybe you know, it decided to downregulate, right? Our immune system naturally, or in an evolutionary sense, said, you know, we need to downregulate this a little bit because it's no longer a predator at the door. It's a stress that's going to last for a long time, like underemployment. But the problem is the downregulation of the immune system is causing some problems for us. It's actually caused a detrimental outcome. So let's take a minute and look at acute stress versus chronic stress. So acute stress, the definition is something happens in your life, and as I said, it's solved in more or less than a month. Usually, in studies, the acute stressor usually lasts for a few minutes. But the definition of chronic stress is something that, number one, pervades a person's life. Number two, forces the person to restructure their identity. And number three, has a kind of an unending, the end to it is a little bit ambiguous. And I thought, oh my gosh, look what has happened to us with this pandemic. It is, you know, it's basically pervading our lives. It's making us change our identity from fully employed to unemployed or underemployed, or having a family that we see regularly and now we're not. And then there's the when will it end, which of course is the big question. So how I like to think of the difference between acute stress and chronic stress is, if you were to look at your life as a radar screen, an acute stress would be a blip, right? Like, oh, that fender bender, boy, that's a blip on my screen. And now there's another blip because I got to go get my car fixed, and another blip because I have to talk to my insurance agent. A chronic stress that pervades your life makes the whole radar screen light up. So instead of just a blip here and a blip there and a blip there, the whole radar screen is lit up. And I tell my cancer patients that, because sometimes cancer patients, their whole, and cancer would be like the most scary of the scary diagnoses. And so for some, it lights up their whole radar screen. But what I try to tell them as a diagnostician is, you know, the cancer is a blip on the screen. Your chemotherapy treatment is a blip on the screen. Your doctor's appointment is the blip on the screen, because the rest of the screen is your family, your friends, your job, your self-care. So at any rate, we are certainly right now, this pandemic is certainly the very much so definition on stress. So these studies, they have tests, they do immune assays and functional assays. So the immune assays measure certain cells that get activated in our immune system. They measure proteins and functions. The functional assays are ones where in the lab, the research scientists do it in vitro. So they get the person or the animal set up, and they add the stress, and they measure the function of the immune system. Now, as I implied earlier, both acute stress and chronic stress change our immune system. Certain kinds of cells get mobilized during acute stress. So fight or flight infection comes in, fight or flight immune system gets activated, and certain cells get activated, including pro-inflammatory cytokines. Now, cytokines are what you've heard in the phrase cytokine storm, that some medical personnel are talking about, that happens in the lungs. They're calling it a cytokine storm. Now, it turns out it's not only in the lungs. The cytokines are pro-inflammatory hormones that are in our whole body. So what chronic stress does lead to higher levels of the response by those pro-inflammatory cytokines. So while acute stress is more like necessary pro-inflammation response, short term, what's happening now is it's becoming what they're calling a cytokine storm. So this dysregulation of the immune system is allowing people to be a little more susceptible to catching colds. So one of the other interesting things about chronic stress is that it allows the immune system, or what happens to the immune system is that chronic stress activates latent viruses. And when a latent virus gets activated, it's a definite sign that our body has lost immunological control over the virus. So it's kind of a sign of a global immunosuppression. So we're looking at, the indicators of acute stress versus chronic stress, and how the chronic stress is leading to more detrimental changes in our immune system. Now, one of the really interesting things is that it's not only the temporal aspect of the stressor, it's this identity role thing. That's the number one effector, is this identity or social role, which is so much happening right now. And then, as I said, where's the control of it? Feeling a little out of control. And then third important factor recently they've been studying is hope for the future. So that's another thing. Not only do we not know we're out of control in terms of how long it's going to last, what's the hope for the future? Which at this point, I think I'm sure a lot of your patients that you've been able to talk to with telemedicine are feeling a little hopeless. Now, your immunosuppression due to chronic stress can be anywhere from 15% effect to 90%. And that's pretty stunning. In fact, lab rats that had cancer and were given chronic stressors were more likely to get, their cancer was more likely to metastasize. So we know that with any kind of disease, stress is going to be a negative factor. So we're going to look right now at a picture of what the immune system is in the pulses. So it's the right side. So it's kidneys, stomach, spleen, lung, large intestine. That this earth and metal right here, which I'm showing it with my wrist, but here it is. This is your immune system in your pulses. So this is why I'm fanatical about people's digestion working right, because digestion is right here, right? Part of digestion. Obviously, on the other side of the pulses, there's the liver and gallbladder involved in the in small intestine and digestion. But in terms of the immune system, here we have it right here. Here we have earth and metal. So if the earth sector is empty or worry is impacting it, early childhood trauma, then the energy that's supposed to be flowing over to the lung, large intestine is not going to flow over there. Maybe this is empty. Well, what's going to fix this? So whenever I feel anything going on in this sector, I will say to my patients, I'll ask about lung, large intestine, right, and immune. I'll say, do you have any skin issues or hair issues, or how about allergies, asthma, any breathing issues? Because I can tell that they're going to have either skin issues from lung, large intestine or immune system issues. And I have been known to say, I guess a little Jim rubbed off on me. They say, no, I don't have any skin issues. I don't have any immune system issues. And I will say, well, you're going to. If we don't get this in order, if we don't get this spleen, stomach, lung, large intestine, which of course is funded by the kidneys, we're going to have a problem. So this is where you're liable to see right now or anytime when your patients happen to get frequent colds. That's where you would see it in the pulses. Now, this, especially for Chinese medicine and Western medicine has demonstrated that the effects of chronic stress, the negative effects of chronic stress on the immune system is not the same for everyone. Early adversity, early childhood trauma exaggerates people's immune system response, therefore increasing the chances of them getting illnesses or advanced cellular aging. Now, what it means without the advanced cellular aging thing is that they have a harder time fighting colds. One of the problems is their body gets the inability to terminate cortisol production. So what happens is they get too much cortisol. Again, in the world of everything in balance, anti-inflammatory cortisol is important and helps for immune response, but chronic elevations of it lead to this dysregulation of the immune system. And then what happens is, they start to get a little bit of a cytokine flush. The main group that has been studied with this factor is caregivers, and that's because of the advanced cellular aging thing. So when I talk about early childhood trauma in the pulses, this is where you see it in the spleen stomach sector here. You'll notice that I draw the arrow down, which means empty. And this is the pulse. It's the relinquishment wound pulse also. So someone who's been adopted or a preemie, even though preemies aren't, it's not the same as adoption. Obviously, they're not given away to, they're not put up for adoption. However, preemies are generally taken away from their mom right after they're born because they need care. And they also will very often hit what I call the relinquishment wound pulse. And this pulse picture is particularly dangerous for people who are wanting to have a strong immune system, because in the green circle is our immune system, right? According to the way I teach pulses. And this down arrow means how on earth is the immune system going to get help? How is it going to be funded? Now we're going to have to go back and we're going to have to fund it with both of the kidney pulses and all the other organs, because as we know, everything's going to flow in a sine wave, Tai-Chi symbol sort of way. But for these people, this picture of someone leaves them predisposed to have digestive issues and immune system issues. So it's something, when you see it in your pulses, it's something to deal with. I've had patients who have been like, oh my gosh, I've had a super happy life. I'm adopted and I was a preemie and I've had a super happy life. And now you're showing me this picture, because I always show my patients their picture of this situation where that's empty, it's needy, it's sometimes it even feels like a little sucking motion, like where's the nurturing, where's the nurturing, where's the nurturing. And I tell them the beauty of acupuncture is it can resolve those patterns. That's the total beauty of acupuncture. You feel a pattern like that in the pulse, and acupuncture can resolve that. So it's just a phenomenal medicine. But at any rate, my passion is showing. But as I said about caregivers, one of the things that can happen with caregivers is the same sort of immune system dysregulation, because they have this enhanced cortisol production. And so they were the first group that was studied with this idea of, what's happening to caregivers, because what's happening is that idea that they are suffering from early cellular aging. Because honestly, as we age, our immune systems go through a little cellular aging anyway. In fact, so do our lungs. Our lung measurements go down a little bit with age, just naturally. So that's the importance, especially at time right now, but all the time, of maintaining this improved immune system, maintaining your patient's immune system, like we're probably all now doing with herbs, since we can't do acupuncture or teaching them some acupressure. So at any rate, this is the early childhood picture of trauma right here, and how it can affect the immune system. So next we have stress, psychological stress, negative moods. Research knows that psychological stress and negative mood states have a negative impact on our immune system. Just to give you some examples of that, irritable bowel syndrome, this extra long sustained cortisol production that happens during chronic stress leads those people to have more GI symptoms. In cytokines, which I already mentioned, the heavy release of those resulting from stress, or the exacerbated release of those resulting from stress, exacerbates schizophrenia and schizophrenia brain alterations. For autoimmune diseases, which I think in our practices we've seen an uptick in those. In fact, I have a class about that it's amazing how many there are out there. Chronic stress makes people more susceptible, enhances their risk of starting to have an autoimmune disorder. And not only that, but they have more difficulty. So let's say they already have an autoimmune condition and now they have this chronic stress, they have difficulty down regulating their immune responses. So again, they're going to have more of these conditions that are normally good under fight or flight, but under chronic stress, they turn into immune system dysregulation. And then in MS, neuropeptides that are secreted normally under stress activate glial cells in the brain that release inflammatory molecules that actually makes the brain inflammation and the symptoms of MS worse. So again, us dealing with the psychological stress of our patients, or the negative moods. Negative moods, very soon, right after scientists place a person in a negative mood state, right after it, they have higher levels of inflammation in their blood. On the other hand, at least in men, which is a very interesting statistic, a positive mood makes that inflammation go right down. So there we have not negative, positive. Now this picture shows the left side. On the left side, kidney, gallbladder, liver, small intestine, heart. And you can see that when the liver is sending this energy toward the heart, what we're going to get is heart blockage, insomnia, anxiety. The spirit level, the heart is not going to accept that energy from the liver, right? Everything is supposed to flow like this, a nice smooth wave, right? Yang and yin, yang and yin, yang and yin, like the Tai Chi symbol, but the circle is the continuation of yang and yin. But in a situation like this with chronic stress, you're going to have a negative impact on the heart and the small intestine and the spirit. And then, of course, that energy from the small intestine heart that's supposed to go back over to the other side kidney is blocked or impacted or too weak to go over here and help the other kidneys. So it starts a negative cycle. And, you know, an upper line, like if I had drawn a line up here in the drawing, that would be current stress. As we go down deeper, we're getting more deeply into something that's more chronic or old. Like, for example, if I were to go back to this slide with the early childhood trauma, you can see that the arrow is drawn way down deep in the pulses. That's because it's old. It can even be prenatal. Over here, this lower line, even lower than that, would be an indication of stress or trauma or anxiety that started in childhood, and then up is more current here. So at any rate, this is just a little picture of how stress can negatively affect people's pulses. Okay, then let's go to fear. Oh, darn, I drew this picture wrong. Oh, that's funny. Sorry, those dots should be on the kidney here. So that's scattered. This would be scattered lung, large intestine, so you can learn that. But these red dots were supposed to be over here, so sorry about that. We have here is the true picture of a scattered kidney pulse from fear, and these little dots should be over here. Now, fear, of course, is the supreme depleter of kidney. It's the supreme depleter of our core chi that we're supposed to be living on. And when we have situations like now, that's what you're going to be feeling in the pulses when you get back. It's like under your finger, You know how fireworks start out at the ground with a big boom, but once they get up in the air, it's like they're falling down like this, all these little points of light. That's what that feels like under your fingertip, whichever finger is on the kidney. So it would feel like that. But fear is a very big cause of immune system dysfunction. It also leads to endocrine system function, autonomic nervous system dysfunction. It negatively impacts our sleep and waking cycles. It can lead to eating disorders, headaches that begin to turn into migraines, muscle aches that begin to turn into fibromyalgia, body aches that begin to turn into chronic pain, difficulty breathing that feels like asthma, the inability to have loving feelings toward others, mood swings, obsessive compulsive thought, learned helplessness, which is a fear of me right now for my patients. I'm really, really worried that when we get back to work, this is what I'm going to be feeling a lot. And then we're basically starting all over, right? Because this kidney pulse is supposed to go up here and feed these organs, which is supposed to come back over here and feed these organs, and back and forth like the infinity symbol, which is hard to do when both of our kidney pulses are scattered like this instead of well consolidated. Memory issues too, short-term and long-term memory. So at any rate, we need to watch out for this. This would be one of your, for example, I had a young woman come in for fertility issues. I think she was 32, pretty young to have fertility issues. And her doctor had told her that all of her hormones were like those of someone who's going to start menopause any minute, and she only had 2 follicles. And when do you want to get your IVF? And she said, oh, my acupuncturist helped one of her daughters who has an autoimmune problem get pregnant, so I'm going to do that. So I actually presented her case at an association of acupuncture society research because after 3 months, she kept going to the fertility doctor. And after 3 months, all of her hormones were up to normal levels. And she had 200% more follicles. He still asked her when she wanted her IVF. But I felt this in her pulses. So I felt this scatteredness in both her pulses. And so I asked her about her childhood, because, it was down deep. So I said, so, she's from Eastern Europe. I mean, a country where I think generally we get the idea that families are so wonderful and close-knit and that sort of thing. So I said, so, how was your childhood? And I have learned to be better at it than Jim. Instead of saying, no, you're not a vegetarian, I have learned to be a little more gentle with my questions, which I think is good for all of us to do. But I said, so, how was your childhood? And she said, all good, nothing big to talk about. And I said, so everything good in the family, no childhood illnesses, et cetera, et cetera. No, all good. So then I thought, well, I'm going to explain what I'm feeling, see what she says. And I said, well, I'm feeling this sensation in your pulse that to me means fear. It means for all intents and purposes, she and her husband have a great life, really good jobs, nice house, blah, blah, blah. But she says to me, fear, huh? I grew up during the war in my country. Does that have anything to do with anything? And I'm like, bingo, I love pulse diagnosis. So I said, well, how much fear? Like, were any of your brothers or your father or anybody in the military and hurt? No. But she said, there's always just that war thing happening. So this is something that I'm a little nervous that for my patients, that this continued stress, this continuing this part of our pulses having to fund everything else, all the other organ systems, that it's going to start to get a little scattered, because people don't know what's going to happen. I mean, this is why I tell my patients, if you have to get news, how about once a day? Get the news once a day, get your stats once a day or whatever you're going to do, but don't watch the news all day, because what's the news going to do to your pulses? It's going to do this. These little dots should be here. It's going to scatter your kidney chi, because you can't be consolidated when you're watching the news all the time and they're telling you how awful everything is. So let's be full with that with our patients. So we're going to talk a little bit about the spleen, because it turns out that the spleen, when the organs are all studied, the spleen turns out to be one of the most negatively affected organs by this immune system dysregulation. When they do things like autopsies that include the spleen, the liver, and the brain, for example, the spleen is the one that seems to have the most dysregulation. Now, this is dangerous for us in terms of Chinese medicine, because the spleen is part of the earth. It's part of the spleen stomach digestion. If it starts getting out of balance, if our digestion doesn't start working very well, then we are going to potentially get some sort of condition or be more susceptible to colds. In fact, the lungs, besides the brain and the liver, the lungs are another organ that they specifically test for some of the changes in immune cells. And interestingly enough, for what's going on with COVID-19, the spleen is still the organ that is most negatively affected. And that's because the cells go, these immune system cells that are in dysregulation go to bone marrow and our lymph tissues. So that's why the spleen is most affected. Now, we all know, we've known just since we were kids that the spleen is a part of our immune system, but it's interesting to hear this specifically, that it is so negatively impacted. So for us in Chinese medicine, again, we have to be thinking about that digestion that we were talking about, that earth, and how is this negatively impacted? Now we're finding out it's not only negatively impacted from the emotional sense, right? We've all known that, stress, anxiety, fear, all of that affects the overwork, overthink, all affects the spleen. But now, doubled onto that, we've got this knowledge that the spleen is also physically being impacted in a really negative way. So that's why, again, if we were going to go back to something like this childhood slide, and the immune system, we've got our work cut out for us, right? This is a pattern. This is a pattern from childhood that's affecting the immune system. So, but again, the beauty of early childhood trauma or patterns like that in the pulses is that we can change it with acupuncture. One of my colleagues and I do that with people who have a trauma pattern in their pulses. What we call unravel that. We unravel the energetic patterns of trauma, which is, I think, another thing we're going to be doing after this event, because it's trauma all over the place, right? I did a podcast about self-compassion, and Rebecca and I actually started doing some podcasts because we realized, wait a minute, we're used to work with people who come to us and, they say, oh, I had this trauma, or they have PTSD, but oh my gosh, people are being traumatized every day. So we need to figure out some ways online to help people reduce their trauma. So you guys, hopefully you can do some webinars for your patients, show them a little Qigong, get them to put their hands down there on their lower dantian to help that, keep that a little bit consolidated. You all know what to do. But as this slide says in the end, one of the most striking features here is that immune cell changes persist for are still persisting a month or so after the stress is over. We're talking about trauma here. We're just talking about stress. So it's, I can't stress enough how much we're going to have to do after this is all over with our patients. So just to remind you again about the review of the immune system in the pulses, right? Spleen, stomach, lung, large intestine, earth, and metal, getting those working again for people, because not only the studies on the immune system show both disease outcomes that are associated with inadequate immunity. So that would be your people who have old trauma. As we get older, our immune system becomes a little more what you would call, quote unquote, inadequate. But also the disease outcomes from this excessive immunity activity, this excessive immune activity that comes from chronic stress. So you have your early trauma patients with what they call inadequate immune response, and then you've got your stressed people with this excessive immune activity. In fact, it'll be interesting for you guys to take note in your cases after this event, since this is leading to what they would call excessive immune activity. Do more of your patients show up with allergies, and do more of your patients show up with some autoimmune condition that they never expected or never had before. It'll be interesting for us to keep. Remember, a case study is a research project. So we have gazillions of case studies that we can be presenting about all this. So basically, what we might see is people losing the functional flexibility of their immune system. That's another way to put it, is that the flexibility of our immune system function is being negatively impacted by this. So we know that almost all functional measures of the immune system are negatively affected by chronic stress. By the way, demographics taken in the studies do not moderate that effect, and neither do age or sex. So it is across demographics, across age and sex. Now, talking about worry, here is, I talked a lot about the spleen, but here's a worry picture. This is what worry looks like in the pulses. So you can tell when a person is a worrier when you feel their pulse in the spleen stomach bounce back and forth like this. What it really looks like, and as you get better, you can feel this, is the Sanjiao part of the brain coming from the right kidney pulse comes into the spleen stomach. That out of balance energy gets rejected by the spleen back toward the kidney. So that little parabola there is particularly dangerous. Worry is the most unforgiving, relentless, gives you nothing back emotion. This is what I tell my patients. I say, you know, after you have a good cry, you get feedback from your body that you feel good. If you have a little bit of an angry outburst, you feel good afterwards. This worry never makes you feel good. Never. There is not a positive mood outcome from worry. So you have patients who are worriers, you got to nip that in the bud. Again, I'm change it during their treatment. I'm going to make this pattern go away, but you're going to have to help with that when you get home. So I try to find out, is it worry about something you can control or not control? Okay, credit card debt that you can control. You know what? Go make a payment, cut up your credit card. You need to do something to stop that worry. Out of control, like what's happening right now, harder, right? It's a little bit harder. It's one of those things where that's why we're going to teach them Qigong. That's why we're going to teach them acupressure. That's why we're going to on herbs, because we need them to get control of this feeling right here. Because remember the pulse, remember the pictures that showed the circle here where the earth and the metal were circled because that's the immune system? What do you think is going to happen to your immune system with this? What do you think is going to happen to your immune system when the energy isn't going over to the lung? Hello? You're going to start having some immune system problems. So that's another factor right now that we're dealing with, is all the worry that have, including some of ourselves. So talking about at-risk populations for health issues, I've been very blessed to know two practitioners, Kevin First and Sarah Nelson, who used to live in Alfred, New York. And as soon as I heard about Alfred from them, I said, oh my gosh, do you think you could help me set up a pulse diagnosis study there? Because my hypothesis was I take a lot of big city pulses, right? Denver, big city, Littleton, big city. So I feel a lot of what I call big city pulses. And I had this hypothesis immediately that rural pulses, rural America, small America pulses would feel much different. Well, God love them. They set it up for me. I am in love with Alfred, New York there. I am in love with the people there. And interestingly enough, Kevin and Sarah happen to be pulse interns, so we talk about this together. But what I was expecting was I was honestly expecting a certain picture in the kidneys, because this is an area where there isn't a lot of influx of new people. And that's the other thing about big city pulses, right? You have influx of people all the time, every day, all kinds of age groups and you know, people from other countries. But this particular place, not so much. Well, it turned out it wasn't what we thought, really, and this is just preliminary readings, but I would say close to 100% of the people had some sort of that little down feeling in their earth. Now, what I'm going to have to do when I'm writing this up, and a research scientist, is think about that if your kidney pulse is weaker because there hasn't been too much of an influx of other DNA to consolidate there, then clearly it's going to affect the rest of the pulses. But anyway, this would be an example of a population of people who might be a little autoimmune suppressed, immune system suppressed. Well, probably both those. But at any rate, it was an interesting thing. I've enjoyed that study, and I'll eventually publish the results of that. So here's normal. Right? This is what you're looking for in every treatment. You're looking for the flow of yang and yin, yang and yin. As I said, we all know this is the inside of the Taiji symbol, right? This is the inside, and then a circle goes around it because this wave is supposed to go like this across the pulses. So all of those pictures I showed you were out-of-balance pulses, right? All those pictures I showed you were pulse pictures that don't look anything like this. But this is the goal of every treatment. This is why I say we can take any pattern and we can change it, acupuncture. And this is what we want to feel in the end. Can you imagine how good you would feel when this happens? This is why acupuncture feels so good, right? This is why patients say, oh my gosh, yeah, I totally felt great during that treatment. I show my patients a picture like this because I want them to have the visual of this is what's happening during a treatment with Martha. And this is what I want my body to continue to do. So that way they actually have this visual image of that IG symbol, that yang and yin, yang and yin, yang and yin. So this is your goal of every treatment, for me anyway, in my system. So we do know that we want to try to get the patient's pulses to normal. I want to I'm give the little disclaimer that clearly, even though I'm giving you a list of points there and talk about them for a minute, clearly every treatment needs to be designed for your individual patient, their individual pulse picture. This is by no means an acupuncture point prescription. I don't do that. I work with each individual. Like, for example, when I talk about these as maybe one of them being kind of a tonification point, well, clearly you don't want to do that if there's a block. Yeah, that's going to aggravate their symptoms. You don't want to do that too early because that's going to aggravate their symptoms. But I thought I would share some of these points and in this situation, how they might work. So gallbladder 34 controls and relaxes muscles, right? So that's going to give the liver more of a capacity to buffer stress. Do 20 and heart 7, they're going to support the nervous system. Heart 8, that's a primary point for fire, of course. It can help unblock the diaphragm. So, you know how people, that feeling of they're just like upper chest breathing, it's partly because their diaphragm is blocked and they can't really physically take a deep breath. So Heart 8 will help with that, and then help with the normal ascending and descending function of Earth. Of course, being fire, it's also going to help manage that liver fire that's trying to get to the heart. And then we have spleen 9. Of course, it's going to help disperse dampness due to a weak spleen, but it can also tonify the spleen and the pancreas, so it can be used for both there. Ren 12 and stomach 36 together. Spleen 9 is obviously going to help balance the earth. It's that balancing the earth will help balance the metal, which of course, as I already said, earth and metal are the immune system. It's going to, since everybody has to communicate through the earth, a point like spleen 9 done correctly is going to allow communication between organs more, which is, as I just showed you, is important for, for this to happen. The organ systems, this would be one sector. So this would maybe be your kidney sector, and then next to it, this wave starts up again into the spleen stomach, and then this wave starts in into the lung large intestine. So as I said, opening up the earth can help that. So Ren 12, stomach 36, spleen 9 together can help do that. Lung 1 and lung 5, now they're going to support and open the lungs. They're going to help the descending chi function of the lungs. So if the kidneys need a little help, it might help that a little bit. They certainly should help that movement from metal to water, because remember, sorry to go back again, but if this is, let's see, this would be a better slide for that. We talked about that this picture goes over to this picture, like the infinity symbol. So if lung 1, lung 5 help open this sector, then this energy is going to be able to go over there and support that side. So that's what I mean by lung 1 and lung 5 helping control the movement from metal to water. And then kidney 10, water point, it's going to help anchor qi. It's going to help condense it into jing. Certainly during times like this, our storehouse of qi gets depleted. So, we're going to need some treatment there. So basically using these points somewhat like what I talked about, but again, it's not a prescription for everyone. It's going to take some of the wiriness you might be feeling, or blockages or stagnation, and help smooth that out. And then, if your patient says, "Oh, I felt tired after the treatment," or "I felt hungry after the treatment," that's not unexpected, because fight or flight has been making all of our organs, and this chronic stress problem that's been happening with our immune system has been making all of our organs kind of on overdrive. And so when we take that energy and smooth it out, we give the person a little energy to draw from. It's normal for them to maybe feel a little tired or a little hungry. But now, at least when we get that situation going in their pulses, at least their adrenals and their immune system and their digestion can rest and rebuild. That's what's going to have to happen. So I feel like I talked really fast, but I hope everybody learned something. Jeff, that's the actual end of the presentation. So if you want to start questions.
All right, that was amazing. Thank you so much. And we actually have a lot of questions to get through, so let's start asking.
Okay, do you want me to change screen at all, or just leave it like it is?
Here, if you'd like, we can actually remove the slides, and then we'll go just to you and me.
Okay.
All right. So I took those down. So first question, Dr. Lucas, any thoughts on acupuncture protocols to replicate the effect of corticosteroids, which are normally administered as immune suppressants, or any experience with weaning people off of these? Thank you.
Can you say that again, the beginning of that?
Of course. Any thoughts on acupuncture protocols to replicate the effect of corticosteroids, which are normally administered as immune suppressants, or any experience with weaning people off of those?
Okay, so that kind of drug causes a situation in the pulses that's going to feel like too much heat. So what you're going to want to do is kind of pretend, if you will, that you're dealing with heat, and you're going to want to, number one, make sure the daimai and the baomai are open, because what you're going to do is you're going to try to take that excess energy caused by the drug and recycle it back down into the Mingmen fire. So, making sure no blocks, and then you can do points, you can do some heat points like Sanjiao 5, Sanjiao 6. You can think about kidneys afterwards. Like, we can bring the water up because that's been depleted by the drugs, and we're going to need to rebuild that. not all going to happen, obviously, in one treatment, but try feeling for the heat, try feeling for the excess strength, which is false strength caused by the drug. And then your choice of acupuncture points needs to bring the pulse down to that smooth feeling. So try that.
All right. Next question, Dr. Lucas, are chronic issues also seeing a long pulse that extends way beyond the kidney pulse?
Generally not. Generally, it's going to get a shorter lung pulse, especially in this case, because people have so much grief around this. That's another thing I didn't talk about in the class, but yeah, generally not so much. It's more likely to be kind of a short, stagnated lung pulse.
Okay. Does chronic severe stress that people have been feeling during this pandemic have the ability to be an epigenetic factor to turn on disease for which they have the potential in their genes?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That can absolutely happen. That's what one of the things I was kind of alluding to before, that I wonder if we're going to see some more autoimmune conditions after this, where people were like, I've been totally healthy before this.
Next question, does the scattered pulse have an electrical feel to it, like sparks?
Not in my opinion, because it's weak. It's unconsolidated. So something that feels like what you're talking about is more likely to be some sort of anxiety pulse or choppy situation. Could be stagnation, but the scattered kidney pulse is weak. The person's kidney chi is no longer consolidated. So no, it's kind of like those points of light seem that I described with the fireworks. They seem gentle, right? They're just like, psh, 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 psh. Yeah. So that's my technical sound, or weak kidney pulse. Psh, psh,
psh. Next question. In terms of the pulses, are you expecting to see something similar or worse than you did after 9/11?
It's going to be different. It's going to be different because 9/11 was more an acute stress. It was, for most people, it was more like, bam, this thing happened. And right away, we kind of got on it. We got it. We got our lives a little more under control. For many people, it was, of course, a horrible experience. It lasted longer. But for those of us who were further away from it and none of our family members were impacted, it was more or less acute. Like, oh my gosh, it happened. I still have my job. I still have my family. I can still hug everybody. So no, it's going to be different. This time, we're going to see more of an effect on that right side, like I showed in my opinion, in the earth and the metal. The 9/11 was way more on the left side, way more liver, gallbladder, heart.
All right. And then, will you be teaching a course on rewinding this type of trauma?
Yes. Yeah, it goes along with pulse diagnosis, so it'll be incorporated in pulse diagnosis classes / internships, but yes, absolutely.
A next question. I'm curious if you are patients in person right now, and if you have checked these pulses on them, how their pulses have changed since COVID-19 pandemic, or are you extrapolating this information from your general understanding of pulses?
Nope, not seeing any people in person right now, but I've seen this before. As I said, unraveling the trauma is one of my specialties. So I'm basing this on, decade experience with this. But I'm expecting it as soon as I can see people.
All right, coming soon. And then next question, are elders being affected greatly because they potentially have lots of childhood trauma, lived through abuse, survival, starvation, struggles, and lack of nurturing from the early 40s through the 70s? I would love to see a webinar on trauma and the elder patients.
All right, well, then we can think about that. Yes, they are. I mean, there are definitely people who, as I said, or that childhood trauma, unless that's been resolved, just like if you have a blocked eye, unless some acupuncturist helps you unblock that, it's stuck. It's a pattern. So yes, absolutely. And as I said, as we get older, immune systems get a little dysregulated anyway. So it's kind of, unfortunately, a double trauma for them.
And then let's see, next question. I feel we are going to do the treatments we believe the patient needs at that moment, plus add PTSD and autoimmune. Do you agree?
Well, yes, always have to do the treatment that the patient needs at the moment. As I said, my goal is always that nice, smooth sine wave. So I work until I get that. When I don't get it, that's when I feel like that's a teaching moment for us each. I didn't get it. I did my best choice of points. So then you take that case and say to yourself, what happened there? What's going on with that patient that I didn't get the goal? And then, yes, you're going to build on that. As I said, this is going to be rebuilding people. This is not going to be healing people in 1 or 2 treatments.
Would you please talk about points to reduce worry?
Points to reduce worry. Okay. There are no points to reduce worry. That's, as I said, it's a combination, right? I'm going to change your pulses during the treatment. You are not going to have that worry pulse while you're on my table. But that's where a little, I'm a research psychologist, but I still like to play a clinical psychologist too. That's where a little bit of teaching them Qigong, teaching them to notice when they start worrying, making them have some sort of a little diagram of, okay, these are the things I'm allowed to worry about. Dr. Martha said I can think about these things, or not worry about, I can think about these things, but this side, these are the things I'm not allowed to think about. These are worry things. So you make them have a little behavior contract. And yeah, I'm allowed to think about my grandkids. I'm allowed to think about cooking. But over here, no, not so much. So unfortunately, there are no magic don't worry points. The don't worry part comes from you as the practitioner saying, see in this picture how this worry is wrecking your digestion and your immune system? I need you to understand that. And like I said, this is a little channeling little Jim. I need you to understand that because it's a partnership. It's a partnership. You and I are in a partnership with this.
All right, thank you. Next question. When was the study in New York done, and was that during a very stressful situation?
It was not during a very stressful situation, and it's ongoing, actually. I've done three legs of it now, and I just talked with Kevin this morning and said, hope to see you soon because we are going to go back. So it's still ongoing. It's been the last maybe a little bit over a year. I think I've been trying to get up there about every 4 months.
All right. And then actually another question about worry. How to change worry with acupuncture?
Okay, you need to get that spleen stomach sector open. So remember I showed the picture with the worry going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So you need to get the communication from the kidneys to the spleen stomach open. Then you need to get the communication from the spleen stomach to the lung large intestine open so it can go back to this side and feed the kidneys again. So whatever you need to do to get, so maybe you use some low points, right? Maybe you use some spleen, stomach, lung, large intestine, kidney lows, just to get the energy flowing. But, you feel the worry, then you need to unfeel the worry after you choose points.
Alrighty. And then what do you say when patients ask, how long will my pulse stay balanced?
Oh, good question. I tell them, this is why I take a pre-pulse and a post-pulse. I take the needles out, I take your pulse. For some people, I have your picture right here. It's going to go right back to the original, like when you walked in the door. For some other people, it's going to last for a little while. This is why it's a partnership. This is why I have them all do a Qigong meditation that I have them download. So yeah, even mine, I'm very particular about, that. And in my pulses, even though they've spent years of getting balanced, I've never gone in and my practitioner has said, oh my gosh, what are you even doing here? Your pulses are so balanced.
All right. Next question. I missed what the lung 1 and 5 and kidney 10 points are mainly for.
Okay, well, lung 1 and 5 are going to help open up the lung large intestine sector, right? So they're going to help, that's going to start to help the flow between metal and between earth and metal to get back over into the water. So that's what lung 1 and lung 5 are going to do, besides help clear the lung, tonify the lungs. And then kidney 10, it's a water point, so it's also going to help with yin, and it's going to help consolidate what we can fix or what we access into jing. So those two can work nicely together because we are trying to connect this with the kidneys over here.
Perfect. Next question. Are there any points to help regulate irregular pulse caused by autoimmune issues?
That's partly going to depend on what the autoimmune issue is. But again, for years and years before Western medicine decided it was okay to boost someone's immune system who has cancer or an autoimmune disease, I was boosting their immune systems, not boosting, I was balancing their immune systems. So you need to get the spleen, the earth and the metal balanced for any autoimmune condition. And I do it in a fearless way. Because in Chinese medicine, if you have an autoimmune system, then your immune system needs to be balanced along with your brain. So, you got to do it like I said, finally Western medicine agreed with me that, oh yeah, cancer patients, you need to balance their immune system. So, there are particular points for it, except you are going to be focusing a little bit on earth and metal, and then getting that open so that it's flowing over to the organs on the other side.
All right, thank you. Next question, will you be teaching your pulse class in the New York City area?
I will, because I already have some interns up there. And so I will not only be meeting with them, but I will eventually, and hopefully soon, I will also have a class. I mean, if I may say, I don't know if I can say this, Jeff, or not, but at lucasteachings.com, that's where my classes will be listed. So yes. Check there.
Yes, you're most welcome to say that. There's also links in the follow-up email for some live upcoming webinars with Dr. Lucas, and a link to go to her website. So lucasteachings.com. Okay. But check your emails 5 minutes after we end. You'll all have it there. And then next question, can you give some points to give elderly people where they can do acupressure as a preventative measure?
Sorry, what's the beginning part of that?
Right. Would you be able to give some suggested points to give elderly people for where they can do some acupressure as a preventative measure?
Okay, so they can do, I kind of show them the spleen and the lung channels. And just like you can show them that whole channel, give them an example of that, and then they can do some of their own points. Like I would do spleen 3, spleen 4, large intestine 6, lung 7 to just get started and to kind of open up their immune system. And then I love Ren kidney points in the Mingmen area. So you can show them those. They don't even have to do points. They can just use their whole palm on the Mingmen fire. So starting out with something like spleen 3, spleen 4, stomach 36, lung 7, Li 6, then maybe some heart 5, heart 7. Keep their spirit open.
All right. Next question. Can you explain more, if I'm understanding correctly, why city dwellers would have a stronger kidney energy? I've often heard city dwellers as being described as having weaker constitutions. Okay,
so what it was hypothesizing was that I was going to be working in an area that didn't have much input for new DNA. So when you keep mixing the same, theoretically, keep mixing the same DNA over and over and over again, it gets a little less robust. Whereas big city pulses, I was looking at the DNA part of the kidneys, lots of influx, lots of differences, lots of, you get your DNA test from a little small area that doesn't have much DNA flow, and it's going to be pretty much Eastern European. You come to a place like Denver and you're going to have 30% this and 40% that and 2% this. And so that's kind of what I was going for. I mean, I hear you I think what you're thinking is, if I may, more like, oh my gosh, stress, right? Stress of the big city, noise of the big city, and it's going to steal the kidney chi. Not necessarily, not if all the other organ systems are communicating and balanced.
All righty, very interesting question right here. I'm a new student of acupuncture and oriental medicine, and some of this information on pulses was very new to me. What advice can you offer for the new to pulses to become more familiar? And what did you do that helped you as a student?
All right, well, what I did was I had a mentor, and I was blessed. I was blessed to have Jim at my school. And I didn't have a ton of access to him. It wasn't like he was there all the time and in clinic all the time, but I followed him intentionally. I actually started a practice in his city, so I could drive there. But so my biggest advice to everyone in school is, you got to learn pulse diagnosis. You have to learn it. I know a lot of schools don't specialize in it. So, if you know someone who's good at it, if you can take some classes in it, if it's your interest, I would strongly advise that you do it. I didn't fit in that well at my school. In fact, my book, Pulse Diagnosis Beyond Slippery and Wiry, is because my school was a slippery and wiry school. And everybody was slippery and wiry, or thin and wiry once in a while. So, when I was working with my mentor, I didn't fit so well in that school, but I guess the researcher in me, we're curious, right? We want to solve problems. So it kept me going. It kept me, even though I had to kind of split a little bit. This is school, this is me and Jim. So yeah, if you're interested, anybody can contact me too. If you're interested. I love to talk about pulses, if you couldn't already tell.
I think it's pretty clear. And then if you guys visit lucasteachings.com, there is a way to contact Dr. Lucas there. So please feel free to go there and reach out to her if you'd like more information on mentorship. We still have a few more questions and more coming in. Hopefully you're okay to keep going for a few.
Sure.
All right. I wonder if you have looked at race in your pulse research. COVID-19 is affecting Black people and Native Americans at a higher rate. It's usually explained as less resources and more stressful jobs, but I think being Black in itself carries a lot more stress as life experience.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I haven't specifically looked at that, but whoever asked that question, I would encourage you to look at it. If you have kind of that opportunity, I frankly don't have that much of an opportunity to do it, so I haven't personally looked at it.
Perfect. Next question. Is there a Qigong style you recommend over others for stressful here and now?
Well, I learned a medical Qigong maneuver that is what I recommend to everybody. It's just medical Qigong. I'm not really sure. I mean, I had a mentor for that too, so I'm not really sure if it was a particular style or not. I can tell you, I can give you a link to that. It's just, I call it relaxation Qigong, because it basically tells the person how to move the Qi front, back, sides of the body, and then store it in their lower dantian. So yeah, I don't know like particular styles to say.
All right. I did just put a link to Dr. Lucas's website. The next question was, is it possible to take your pulse class online during the time of telemedicine? And I do believe you have a pulse class that's coming up fairly soon, if I'm correct.
Well, yeah, I'm supposed to have a live class here in Seattle in July. I'm going to schedule more. I'm supposed to have one in St. Paul too. So, the thing with pulse diagnosis, just like cosmetic acupuncture, how are you going to learn to put the needle in the right depth online? How are you going to learn to feel this online? So I'm happy to give people as much information as I can. Honestly, you're going to need to feel it.
Completely understandable. Next question. If the stomach and spleen pulse are tight, is there a specific meaning to that and how to balance it?
Okay, so that depends on what you mean by tight. I'm more focused on the flow of it. So to me, that would mean it's not flowing. That would mean that the pulse in that sector isn't flowing to the sectors. So again, I would focus on making the diami open so the kidney chi can flow in. Maybe that's why it's tight. I would do some low points, kidney lows, spleen, make large intestine lows, because again, the tight means there's no flow. The tight means there's no communication between the organs.
All righty. And I think we are at our last question. During the pandemic, most people are saying they are cooking more, eating more, gaining weight, etc. Do you feel this is due to imbalance of spleen and stomach, worry and fear, kidney?
I'd probably say all of the above, because people are, and they're less active. I mean, I said to my husband, it's interesting that not everybody's not going to be so fit after this, because you have all this time to go running now and do all your weightlifting. But sure, it's, the things worry does is, as I said, I showed in that drawing that it comes in from the Sanjiao kidney, goes back toward the kidney. So our digestion isn't even getting any proper qi as long as we're doing that. So then our digestion doesn't even work that well. It might not even really be all that other stuff, worry and overthinking. It might just be that our digestion isn't working so well because it's not getting the proper communication from our kidneys anymore.
All right. And then we have one more question that came in. People are also drinking more alcohol. How will that mix with the stress?
Okay, that's going to mix with the stress because it's obviously going to negatively impact the liver. It's going to make their liver a little more toxic. So we're going to have to do some herbal work with them afterwards if they're over drinking. And, it's just hiding what they won't deal with. Drinking the alcohol is just hiding. It's just preventing them from dealing with their depression or their anxiety. So we are going to have a ton of work to do after this, really.
All right. Well, I honestly can't thank you enough. And I know every single person that joined us today feels the same. This was extremely informative, really great information. We had a lot of people attended today. So everyone check your email afterwards. There are some links and information on where you can learn more from Dr. Lucas. Also in the chats, I just put a bunch of links to some upcoming webinars that we have planned. Also, some of our partners, such as the Pacific College and Net of Knowledge, are all offering a lot of free webinars at this current time to help people stay together and learn. But then also practitioners like Dr. Lucas have seminars that are offered online that include CEUs and PDAs. So please check out her website. Everyone, thank you so much for attending today. Thank you to Dr. Lucas for your time. This was really, really informational and really fun. We're glad to have you all here, and we hope to see you all next time. So have a fantastic day, and we'll see you later.
All right. Take care, everyone.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.